Here's the thing about your movie, why I made a curator's pick of the Hollywood Fringe Festival. Community, heart, you're doing it.
This is Like It Is Radio, Black Intelligent Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is Like It Is Radio. Always glad to be connected to you through the larger black diaspora of radio that we have here in Las Vegas. What a beautiful place to be. Kind of windy out there right now, but it is Las Vegas, and we are doing major things here at KCEP FM. Doing it. You know how we do it with Black Intelligent Talk Radio. So in that vein, we're going to connect you to one of the greats today in the form of Professor. That's right. We're going to talk about, first off, I got to welcome Cheryl in. And we are going to talk today about Winnie Mandela. Y'all remember Winnie Mandela? This is how we're going to set the record straight. We're going to talk to Baba, Professor Dr. James Small, who's going to enlighten us, engage us, because we need to know about her struggle. And as I would title this, if I was going to title this show, I would title it the Winnie Mandela. In as much as the Winnie Mandela, the wings, the wind within, let me see if we can figure this out. The wind underneath the wings of the Nelson Mandela Revolution. Winnie Mandela, y'all. I don't know if you're ready, but you better pull up a chair because class is about to begin. And you can always check us out on Like It Is Radio, let you know how we're doing through the community. So many events going on. There's an election season happening. But today we're going to talk about Winnie Mandela, if you will. I like to position that by saying that struggle that Nelson underwent, that incarceration that kept him from the public eye, which, you know, good morning again, Cheryl. How you living?
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
It is, and
Look at you all done up. Oh, boy.
Oh, thank
Got
you.
that spring look. Oh, boy.
Thank you. Feeling good.
Yeah. Looking good there. Looking better.
Thank you. I think this is going to be a great show. I think she is definitely someone that we definitely need to talk about.
You playing Frank? Well, that ain't me. Look at that. Cheryl got a fan base, y'all.
Right? Sorry about that.
But, they want to talk to you.
You know, I personally don't think that she got the commentary that was required on the news coverage that we received.
They got you bad, Cheryl. Turn it off. Tell them to wait. Hold up. Yo, she on the air. Who is that?
My sister.
Oh, okay. You can't help family. I know. I got family, too.
Anyways, I just don't think that she got the coverage that was significant to everything that she helped, to keep right.
Because, as I said, she was the person while Mr. Mandela was incarcerated who kept the fire alive.
Yeah, she was
and suffered her own injustices and incarcerations during that time.
Yes, in fact, when he was imprisoned, where she lived, her home was bombed twice. Mm-hmm. They tried everything in their power to keep her, from having the fire and from fighting and keeping what he was fighting for alive, apartheid. So I just really think that, what can't you say about her?
I was happened to be blessed when she and the Nelson came to New York, and I saw him giving that interview with Ted Koppel at City College. Where I know Baba, he's on the line, and I'm sure he remembers that day. But they had a lot of different things going on in the city, and one of the things I was witness to see was when Betty Shabazz and Winnie Mandela met for the first time.
Oh my goodness!
It was on 125th Street, right in front of the building, the Harlem State Building, where they're having a big rally on Lenox, which is now called Malcolm X Boulevard, and just watching their embrace and they just embraced as people, but then they explained. They recognized who each other was, and they hugged each other and just talked. It was like powerful just watching it. I wish I had a cell phone for that, you know what I mean? It was before the cell phone days. But just watching them hugging and embracing, that was
for you
powerful
to even
for
have
me.
that experience, to even witness that.
I was just,
just...
But that's why I thought it was important that we reach out, and I will tell you, the dialogue we're about to ensue is going to enlighten and engage us about the struggle that many may not know that Miss Winnie Mandela was the, if you will, she was the wind beneath Nelson Mandela's wings of revolution. She kept it alive, if I could coin that phrase, because I'm just going to tell you, we're going to buckle it down for a little while. Without any further ado, we have the esteemed historian, father, grandfather, one of my mentors, Baba, Professor Dr. James Small, one of the Africana Studies leaders of then and now, our great master teacher. Dr. Baba, how are you doing, sir?
Yes, sir.
Hey, you got me on up? We got you on up. We appreciate the time that you're going to engage with us about this dialogue about Winnie Mandela, if you will. So, welcome back to Las Vegas via Power 88, the people station, the fabric of the community. This is one of the drums. So how you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm glad you're talking about our heroine, our queen mother. She was everything. She was Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Yasantua, Queen Nzinga, wrapped in one package.
Oh, those names got me flustered. But how is it that here in America, it recognized America played a large part in his capture and demise and incarceration, that we just didn't give her the props necessary as you just described?
Well, a lot of people just don't know the history. What we must remember is that from 1958 until he got out and then 28 years later, he was in prison and incognito. He wasn't talking to nobody. Nobody was talking to him. The movement that we give Nelson credit for was led by Winnie Mandela.
No
that
doubt.
entire period. You see? And so without Winnie Mandela, we never would have heard of Nelson Mandela. He probably wouldn't have gotten out of prison alive. And so we've got to be clear about understanding that Nelson was in prison during that entire struggle.
Right.
And it was Winnie Mandela and the young people of South Africa that she worked with and that followed her that led the struggle, along with the leaderships of the ANC, that led to Nelson Mandela getting out of jail and becoming the president.
In South Africa, did they give her the props? I mean, I recognize that they had a separation after he was, after he was released and paroled. But even as her death, because I have on our Facebook page, Like It Is Radio, a picture that I got from you, sir, that is her, the eulogy, the program. In South Africa, did they revere and respect her efforts?
Oh, yeah. The government, in the beginning, when Nelson was president, and even before, when he went to jail a number of times, and she was put in exile, banished a number of times to the periphery to live in the ghetto. And so, she went through being beaten, being arrested, being abused. She was in struggle from 1952 until she died. This woman was the image of struggle in South Africa. The young people of South Africa, even today, I wish I could be there tomorrow for this funeral, because I know it's going to be something else. I'm actually supposed to be at the UN right now, but I couldn't go because I was taking care of grandchildren. Right now, the South African government is holding a big memorial at the General Assembly building in New York. Last night, there was a gigantic memorial at Abyssinia Baptist Church in Harlem with thousands of people. And that kind of thing is happening around the country this week.
Wow.
So the people of Africa, in Ghana, there's a big memorial going on today. Africa recognizes her. And the people of South Africa, especially the youth, recognize that this was the heart of their revolution. And I was very blessed to have met this lady and worked with her for a short period of time and feeling that spirit. And she was as extraordinary as we imagine her to be. And clear. She was always clear. She was not some crazy radical, that didn't know what she was doing. Her position was very opposite of the ANC and Nelson. Once Nelson got out of prison, And that's probably what led to the divorce and her going on trial, supposedly for murder, etc. When you're a revolutionary and you have to kill collaborators, nowhere in the world is that called murder. Nobody in the South African racist, genocidal, apartheid regime even went to jail for the millions of people they murdered. But they wanted her to go to jail for killing one traitor. You know? So you've got to understand that she was the element that the whites, the Americans, and the British were afraid of, because her position was, we cannot accept independence without accepting control over the gold mines and the diamond mines of South Africa, and the land must be returned to the people. That was her position until she left here.
But as you know, as we all know, Nelson Mandela offered the olive branch of repatriation, so to speak. And then even when you talk about they had those the trials, you know, where there were no
truth and reconciliation.
Yes.
If they were black, they would have all been in prison in The Hague. But they were white, so they were pushed by the West to set up something under Desmond Tutu called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where no matter what crime you committed, if you confessed to it, you would then go free. That hasn't happened anywhere in the world. In Germany, they had the Nuremberg trials, and they hung all of them, okay? In South Africa, the whites, no matter what crime they committed, was allowed to go home to their families, keep their wealth, keep their land, and not pay for anything. And Winnie was opposed to that, you know?
Wow.
And she was opposed to freedom without having control of the wealth of the nation. And that was the conflict she was having with the ANC, with the powers that be, and I'm sure with her husband.
But as we look at South Africa today, under the new leadership, since some of those elders have passed, now they're talking about transferring some of that wealth. You think that's still the fruition of Winnie?
Listen, Winnie was the voice in the air of the youth of South Africa. All right. She was the one that stayed the course of the revolution and of the freedom concept. And right now, you're going to see much more of her ideas come to the surface. And I've been talking with some of the youth in the PAC in South Africa on a daily basis since her passing. And they're very clear about holding the banner of Winnie Mandela up in terms of what she aspired for her people.
Were there any other ladies, or I hate to use that, or females, or ladies in general, who were part of the movement in terms of where it is now? You name those groups, the PAC and the ANC. Are they politically astute to have women as co-partners with them? Because most of them I saw were men.
No. If you remember, after the Sharpsville massacre back in, the late 50s, early 60s, it was the women that took this thing to the street, not the men. It was the women of South Africa, Winnie being one of them and one of the leaders. But it was the women's movement and then the youth movement led by Stephen Biko, who was murdered by the apartheid regime.
Yes. And so, wasn't the CIA complicit in that also?
The CIA, Chase Bank, the Bank of America, IBM, all of them. IBM provided them with all of the technology to run their intelligence operation. The CIA provided them with the training and the skills. Israel provided them with the technology. Britain provided them with the finance. This was the Western imperialism because of the gold, the diamond, the cobalt, the manganese that they were getting out and still are getting out of that country.
It's supposed to be gold right there in Johannesburg, correct? In the city itself.
I don't know about that, but I know South Africa is the world's largest producer of gold and diamonds. That would be enough. But right. Cobalt, most people never hear of cobalt, but without cobalt, you can't fly a jet plane. Because cobalt is what they use to allow in the steel as an alloy to allow the steel to withstand the heat of a jet engine. You cut off the cobalt supply, they'll ground all jet planes in the world within 6 months.
So it is that the South Africa that we see now is really not the South Africa of possibly even Nelson Mandela's dream, because there are still whole places. I mean, they still have ghettos like Soweto and other places, but there are whole places where they're just white people, correct?
South Africa, the way we hear about it on the news over here, the way white folks flip it and play it, is an illusion. It's an illusion of freedom. What happened is they just simply became the governors of apartheid. Nothing changed. Most of the major businesses are still owned by whites or other foreign nationals. The ghettos that apartheid created are still there. They're worse. Okay. The employment condition for the population is worse than it's ever been. Violence in those communities are worse as of Chicago. Okay. And so, but the media don't play that.
Yeah.
They play this, and many of our middle class and upper class who go along with certain negative programs give you the feeling that South Africa is this extraordinary example of how you arrive at freedom without a war. The whole reason Nelson was let out of jail is because the Cuban army had decimated the South African army in Mozambique and Namibia. And South Africa knew it could not fight a civil war against the ANC and the PAC. And so they negotiated what they did. And in so doing, they negotiated Nelson out of prison. They negotiated giving the ANC control over the government, while America and others went around the world murdering off the leadership of the PAC, which was the most radical of the two groups. First people to get letter bombs sent to them and blow them up was members and leadership of the PAC. Okay? And so when we study the history of that revolution, that is still in progress, and study the history of what occurred in South Africa, you will see that Western imperialism, meaning Britain, France, America, Germany, and Israel, and probably some others, who are the primary beneficiary of the wealth that comes out of the ground in South Africa, were in full support and complicity in all that went on in South Africa from the 40s, even earlier, from the 20s to the present.
Wow.
And the white communities, they're whole towns that are all white. There are cities in South Africa that black people have to be out when the sun goes down, even if they work there. Okay? That's still going on. But nobody reports on that over here.
Well, many of our people, they always, went to South Africa. I just came back from South Africa. And then when you get the other story, did you go anywhere? No, I just, went to South Africa. I did the tourist, I did the safari thing, and, so that misconception. Right. It's just...
It's deliberate misconception, deliberate misinformation, but that's why you'll see uprising are going to be happening there more frequently. And if they don't make some financial arrangement and some land renegotiation, you may see a major civil war down there within 10 years, if not earlier.
Right. Well, Oprah's even got a school down there, don't she?
Yes, she does.
Wow.
But a school is one building for 200 kids, and that's a good thing. But there are millions of people living in poverty the same way they were under the apartheid regime.
Wow. Is China trying to make any inroads there? I recognize they're taking over so much of the continent. Is China trying to get into?
I'm sure China is trying. I don't know how much they've made a headway in South Africa. They're very big in East Africa and Ethiopia and Tanzania, Kenya. They're fairly big in some West African countries. But China is not a Santa Claus, Right. They're also an imperialist with their own interests at heart. But they do give some better deals and better contracts when you study what's going on. But Africa must be wary that no one is her friend. No one. Well, and I think when we get clear about that, we might arrive at some freedom.
Right. I know you're a friend to the continent, especially in Ghana. You have property there. You take tours there and things of that nature. Are the Americans having a big influx in that country since you're so familiar? You go back often.
Yeah, America. You remember, America is the one that openly overthrew Kwame Nkrumah and destroyed the progressive infrastructure economically of Ghana deliberately. Ghana used to have, under Nkrumah, its own refrigerator factory, television factory, shoe factory, furniture factories. America went in and just decimated all of that. Okay? Under Jerry Rawlings, Ghana made a comeback. And right now, Ghana has been a strong democratic and progressive country. But it's still under the foot of America, both in terms of its intelligence apparatus, its military, and its economic pressure. Even though Ghana has gold, Ghana has diamond, Ghana now has oil, it's still suffering under the pressure of American imperial corporate ratings.
Wow.
They may be doing better than some, but when you're up against a force this strong, you have to really have some strong people. There was a big fight in Ghana a few weeks ago about an American military base being approved by the parliament. And it was approved by the parliament, even though thousands and thousands was in the streets demonstrating against it.
Wow.
But it comes down to the position that Sister Winnie Mandela took, that it makes no sense to declare victory when all of your resources is in the hands of the enemy. That's not a victory. And that was her position. And she stayed on that position all of her life. But she was the one in the streets. And this is what people must remember. Nelson Mandela was in prison for 28 years. The 28 years of the most critical part of that movement. And it was led primarily by Winnie Mandela.
That's a truth fact. That's a truth fact. When you think about the concept, I mean, of the leadership of a woman in Africa, people just don't know that the great queens and king, the people that you mentioned, they were equal. They were parallels.
Right. That's not unusual at all. You can go all the way back to ancient Egypt. They had female pharaohs. People know about the one, but there were many female pharaohs in Egypt. You go back to North Africa during the Muslim period, and you will find that one of the greatest leaders fighting against the Arab incursion and had fought against Roman incursion into North Africa was a sister named Amanatu, who fought some extraordinary wars before she lost her life. If you go to Ghana, when the British tried to take control of the Ashanti land, the woman that led them, the army against her, was Nana Ya Asantewa. If you go to Congo, Angola, then you will find Queen Nzanga, who fought the Portuguese for 50 years to stop slavery. And you can go on and on about the women in critical leadership at the head of government and army throughout the history of Africa. So Winnie was in that tradition.
Wow. Well, Baba, I'm gonna let you go. I know you're dealing with the grandkids. Oh, Cheryl has a question. She's just been listening.
Right,
go ahead.
because Professor Small, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and to have you in town. It's for you to just educate us with all the information that you have. But my question is this about Mama Winnie. What was the relationship like towards the ending of Mandela's life? And I ask this because I remember reading something after she had gotten elected to a seat in Parliament where she said that Mandela made a bad deal for blacks.
Mm-hmm. And it was rather antagonistic. I don't know what their personal relationship was. They were husband and wife, even though most of their marriage, they were separated. He was in prison.
Right.
During that period, when she gets into Parliament, they're divorced, and he's married to someone else. So what their personal relationship was, I don't know, but it seemed to have been relatively good in terms of their relationship to one another and the children. And maybe Nelson pulling away from her was a way to keep those people from killing her, because they would not have stopped short of that, for sure. But in terms of their political differences, she was diametrically opposed to the agreement made by the ANC and Nelson Mandela. And remember, Mandela didn't make this agreement by himself. The very man who's currently president of South Africa was the one who was the head of the negotiating committee, not Nelson Mandela. Okay?
Okay.
And he's now one of the wealthiest men in South Africa, black.
Wow.
And I guess that's his reward for the betrayal of his own movement. But we have to just be critical about the historical facts. And then you have to put things in historical context. Why did the white people even come to the table? You must go back then to our great beloved brother Fidel Castro, who even against the advice of the Soviet Union, sent his army into Africa, where they left 15,000 of his own men dead and buried there. But he decimated the South African army, who was fighting in Angola and fighting in Namibia, and Cuba wiped it damn near out. So the whites were forced to the table because they couldn't take on a civil war. But our people, unfortunately, the ones who, from the ANC, who negotiated, just missed the boat in terms of negotiating some of the natural resources to be at the behest of the government to rebuild a country and to rebuild the Sowetos and the slums that the apartheid regime had created. And Winnie Mandela was very clear about the fact that that had to be reversed.
Isn't that kind of like a strange, I guess, duality or parallel at America, even with Dr. King and the vision that he had and where we are now? And now you look at Nelson in South Africa, aside from Winnie, but these aren't the way I believe our revolutionaries, our militants wanted it to be.
No. You know, one of Dr. King's last speech was, I'm afraid I'm integrating my people into a burning house. You know, they have us talking about I Have a Dream, a speech in 1963, which was not the name of his speech at all. His speech was about America, was about slavery and payment to slavery, and America had given us a check that it came back insufficient funds. That little piece about I Have a Dream was an ad-lib paragraph he did, which is not a part of the written speech, and he did that at the behest of Mahalia Jackson, who was standing behind him, had heard him do that at a sermon a few months earlier and asked him to do it, and he just ad-libbed it.
Wow.
You know? But if we read the real speech, you'll go, damn, is this Malcolm X or is this Dr. King? But they never play you that portion, 3/4 of the speech. And so what I think we have to understand is that somebody else is doing the spin on history. You see, we have to learn to tell our own story. And until we tell our own story, we're going to get the version of our story that the enemy wants us to have. That's the case here in America, and that's certainly the case in South Africa. But to come back to our queen and our queen mother and now our great ancestors, when you think of a Winnie, you got to put a whole bunch of other women in that package. You got to put Harriet, our extraordinary queen mother, Harriet Tubman. You got to put Ida B. Wells. You got to put Sojourner Truth. You got to put Yao Santiva and the others. Put them together. Then you got to Winnie Mandela. Because the conditions under which she had to fight, the conditions of apartheid in South Africa, was worse than anything we were under in Jim Crow.
Wow. Yeah,
and
definitely.
yet she stood tall. And yet she stood tall, never took a step backwards, never shut her mouth, never dropped a hand, never stopped marching. Even on her 80th birthday, and people had it all over the internet last year, she was still saying the same things. The president was there, the vice president was there. She chided them sitting right there at her birthday party on their policies. At 80 years old, she was still on it.
Well, Much like you're still on it. Master teacher, Baba, Professor Dr. James Small, one of the finest I know. And I'm telling you, every time we have an opportunity to be graced by the knowledge he presents us, master teacher and historian, part of history himself. Thank you so much, Baba, for your time. Have a great weekend. I look forward to speaking to you soon. And thank you for helping us get Dr. Leonard Jeffries for our Malcolm X celebration. We're really looking forward to that. And just, Baba, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Brother Franklin. Keep doing your work, sister. Keep hanging in there, and y'all keep doing the teaching out in Vegas, because I get calls from people in Vegas all the time because the teachings that you guys are doing.
Well, mention that you do have trips and tours to Africa. How can they reach you to find out more information about those? Because you are the man.
Yeah, they can reach me at my number, 914-960-2693. Or just go to ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com. We got a tour going in July. Egypt, 5 days. We're going to tour the Nile on a yacht. We're going to sleep on the yacht. We're going to visit the tombs. We're going to visit the temples. We're going to visit the pyramids. We're going to visit the museum. Then we'll go into Ghana for 10 days for an extraordinary visit to the slave dungeons, to the beach resorts. We're even going to hang out at a spa the first day in from Egypt just to relax. Then we're going to hang out at the nightclub with Brother Reggie and them and party. So it's a good trip.
All right.
So reach out to me, 914-960-2693 or ProfessorSmallAfricanWorld.com.
And of course, it'll be connected to Like It Is Radio as soon as I get off the air. Thank you so much, Baba. Have a great weekend. Kiss the grandbabies for me and tell your wife I said hi.
I will, and give my love to the family.
I will do
Peace
that.
and blessings.
All right, peace and blessings. Thank you, Baba. There you have it. Master teacher, historian. This is how we do it right here at Power 88. Winnie Mandela. I just knew when I like I said, I had that opportunity, Cheryl. I was right there. One of the beautiful things about being connected in New York. I saw the embrace of Winnie Mandela and Betty Shabazz. And they just embraced. But it wasn't until each of them got an opportunity to realize who they were. And they just stood right there on 125th Street at this big function for Nelson in the backdrop of all the stuff that was going on the stage. This wasn't on stage. This was backstage, when I worked for the Times, I had access. And they just hugged each other and were just talking for a few minutes behind the backdrop of Nelson Mandela's release. And I'm telling you, for me, just watching it, I was like, I'm just, woo. And I mean, it was just for about a good 3-4 minutes. Just the words that were exchanged ear to ear between those two great queens. So I knew who Winnie was back then. And I wish I had the opportunity to have a cell phone to get that picture. That would have spoken volumes.
This is Like It Is Radio, Black Intelligent Talk Radio.